It would be sure great at all the trial and the verdict and everything else. Out of it all, we would find out more about the role the vice president played in pushing this war. I think that's news we want to get. In the end, it's the big macro question: how did he use the evidence to get us into the war? Anyway, thank you.
At today's White House briefing, a severe case of whiplash regarding who exactly this Dick Cheney guy is. Anyway, as we told you yesterday, the vice president's office previously claimed he's exempt from an executive order requiring all of the executive branch to report its handling of classified information to a federal office known as ISOO. His rationale was that he is not part of the executive branch. Today, that rationale flipped 180 degrees when spokesperson Perino revealed that Mr. Cheney has now evolved to a point where he is not just in the executive branch, but he is indistinguishable from the president himself.
The president did not intend for the vice president to be treated separately from how he would treat himself. The president's intention was never to separate the vice president out from himself. If you look on page 18 of the EO when you have a chance, there's a distinction regarding the vice president versus what is an agency.
Well, our staff had a chance. No exemption at all for the vice president on page 18, so we emailed the White House, which referred us to sections 1.3, which is about something else altogether, and 5.2, which makes no mention of the vice president. In fact, there is no exemption for the vice president or even the president when it comes to reporting on classified material. The president himself, most significantly his National Security Council, has mostly been in compliance with ISOO. Why? His executive order specifically says it applies to, quote, any executive agency, any military department, and any other entity within the executive branch. Coupled with Perino's claim that Cheney is a part of the executive branch, his non-compliance with the order leaves Cheney only one argument for non-compliance, that he is no longer an entity of any kind, having evolved at last into a literal shadow government unto himself. Let's turn now to our political analyst, Dana Milbank, also national political reporter of the Washington Post. Dana, good evening.
Hello, Keith.
Until today, the vice president was arguing he was outside the executive branch. Then today, the White House argued he's equal to the executive branch based on these non-existent clauses in one of its own executive orders. Has Cheney just evolved into a higher being beyond our understanding?
It's like understanding the Holy Trinity, isn't it? It's interesting. I think the vice president regards the law much the way he regards arterial plaque, and that is, if you're going along and some law gets in your way, you just push it aside and put in a stent and go on about your business. And that's what he's done in this case. But of course, that's what he's been doing all the way back to the Energy Task Force. That's what he was doing, making the rationales for the Al-Qaeda's links to 9/11. That's what he, as you were discussing in the Gitmo case, whenever you get in his way, you're going to start looking like Harry Whittington.
It's a different level of consciousness. All kidding aside, there's a serious question remaining about Ms. Perino and her citations today. She was either, there are no choices here, flagrantly dishonest or grossly misread an executive order that is by no means written in tough, unfathomable legalese. We should worry about either of them, obviously, but which seems to be more likely?
Well, in her defense, I'm going to posit a third option, and that was that she was merely parroting out what she was told to say. And she was almost certainly told to say that by one David Addington, who is the chief of staff to the vice president. He believes in this extraordinary theory called the unitary executive theory, which basically, if taken to its logical conclusion, means that the president is a dictator and the executive branch is unassailable. It cannot be touched by Congress or by the courts. His theories on everything from torture in the Geneva Conventions to this have managed to permeate the administration. This is a classic example of that. This is picking a fight over an issue that isn't terribly important.
And this all exploded after Congressman Waxman revealed that those ISOO inspectors were unable to gain access to Cheney's files in his office. Now the Attorney General has been asked to weigh in on this. What does he have to do with it, and what should we expect from him? I'm forgetting, what's his name again?
Yes, that fellow. Well, maybe he can appoint Kyle Sampson or Monica Goodling as an independent counsel to get to the bottom of this. But yes, he was asked to do this in January, and once again, I feel like this comes up on almost every issue. The Attorney General has a whole lot of political baggage and is going to have a difficult time weighing in on this issue. Obviously, everybody will expect him to side with Cheney and thereby label it political. So it is very difficult for him to get around that. But if past his prologue, he sides with administrative power.
But at the heart of this, Dana, this is about documents that are vital to national security, and now it appears that there's nobody checking whether Mr. Cheney's office is in compliance. What are the implications of that, and who then steps in to rectify it?
Well, on this particular issue, the implications aren't extraordinary because it really is just reporting the number of documents, the number of times that things were held as classified. But the larger issue is a very significant one because it is constantly testing the bounds of executive power and the relations between the branches. Ultimately, it could go to the courts, but the courts want both the Congress and the White House to show some measure of self-restraint. That's how our government works. What you have in Cheney's case is a man showing no self-restraint. So there's really no way in our system to deal with that other than elections.
Our own Dana Milbank, national political reporter for the Washington Post. As always, Dana, great thanks. Have a great week. 2/3
of Americans say it's not worth fighting.
So?
So you don't care what the American people think?
No, I think you cannot be blown off course by the fluctuations in the public opinion polls. There has, in fact, been fundamental change and transformation and improvement for the better. That's a huge accomplishment.
Open borders policy and its decision to ignore the enforcement of this country's immigration laws is part of a broader agenda. President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it, and he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States. Bill Tucker reports.
The Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America sounds benign, hardly like a policy that critics call NAFTA on steroids. It's a deal that few have even heard of.
It's being done again by very few people at the very top on behalf of the investment class, but the working class of people. Political officials across our country, from communities, from cities and so forth, they don't know anything about this.
Yet it was agreed to by Mexico's President Fox, Canada's Prime Minister Martin, and President Bush in 2005. Administration officials counter their critics by saying everything about SPP is on the White House website. And they say the partnership is not a treaty, but more of an outline of priorities between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Still, some wonder why there haven't been public discussions about the goals being pursued.
This SPP includes, for instance, a committee that is sitting down to harmonize our meat inspection and food safety. So how far away from a trade agreement can your dining room table and what you feed your kids be?
Other parts of the agreement mention border security as an issue, which include all of North America. In fact, the name of the agreement is not Security and Prosperity of the United States, but of North America.
When we elect officials, we expect them to act on our behalf. When we get involved in cooperative frameworks with other countries for joint regulation of fisheries or rail transportation or the skies, we're basically sharing our sovereignty with that government and outsourcing some of what we give our elected officials.
As disturbing as some find SPP, there is legislation in the House introduced by Florida's Katherine Harris that closely resembles the goals of the partnership. Included in that bill is a section which calls for the securing of Mexico's southern border by the United States and Canada. Lou, that's not the border with the United States, that's the border they share with Belize and Guatemala.
The idea that the White House would respond that this is on their website, this involves intricate workings amongst the Commerce Department of this country and Canada and Mexico's, of course. A regional prosperity and security program. This is absolute ignorance. And the fact that we reported this, we should point out, when it was signed. But as we watch this thing progress, these working groups are continuing, they're intensifying.